This is Andy Crouch from All About Beer. I wanted to take a second to thank Highland Brewing for coming on as an underwriter. We appreciate having the support of Asheville's original craft brewery and love that the folks at Highland get how important it is to support beer journalism. If you want to join Highland and the other companies helping us pay our writers, podcasters, and artists, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. It's an affordable way to join the All About Beer community.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. Neil Witte wants you to start thinking about how your beer is poured. The Master Cicerone brewery consultant, educator, and draft technician has long been advocating for clean lines and proper service. But as of late, he's been thinking about how beer is presented and what that does for flavor and the customer experience. After listening to this conversation, you're going to give the man what he wants. But first, if you like this show, and judging by all the folks who listen, you do. So I hope you'll consider leaving a review on your podcast platform. It helps other people find the show, and hey, it's also a little boost for me personally. I've been talking about this on the show for a while, and you hear Andy Crouch at the cold open of the show. But the way we're able to keep bringing original content to the beer industry and to curious beer drinkers is through your support. We've created an affordable underwriting program that is easy on your budget, helps you get visibility, and is an altruistic way to directly fund writers, photographers, and editors. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. And when you're at the website, poke around a bit, read some of the recent articles, peruse the archives, which go all the way back to our founding in 1979, and you can tune into other podcasts like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast that's hosted by Don Tess and M. Souter. You won't be disappointed. You can also follow us on social media at All About Beer to keep up with everything else we have going on. We'll get into the conversation with Neil Witte in just a moment. But first, here's a note from this episode's sponsors, and we thank them for their support and hope you'll give them your business. Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp is built for the business community, serving everyone from small independents to larger franchises. Whether you need low minimums for a limited batch or bulk pricing for your go-to products, they've got you covered. Join thousands of breweries that trust Stomp for their custom printing needs. Go to stompstickers.com and try them out and score 15% off of your first order with the code FIRSTRUN.
Shed 60-Minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60-Minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60-Minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
A few weeks back, I was in Salt Lake City, and I was visiting the Templin Family Brewery. The lagers are expertly and lovingly crafted and taste delicious, and the service is a thing of marvel. The correct glassware, the right sizes, and each are patiently served, resulting in thick heads of foam. I went back a few times for both the beer and the presentation. On the flip side, I wound up going to another spot where I ordered a perfectly good beer that was poured from a standard faucet into a shaker pint, resulting in a stadium pour, like filled right to the brim with no foam. It was perfectly okay and a lovely evening out, but compared to my Templin visit, it was lacking in so much. All of that got me thinking about Neil Witte. The educator, the draft technician, the Master Cicerone, and all-around good guy has been working on pour experimentations as of late. He's done some pop-ups, he's being an evangelist for service, and he's getting folks thinking about upping their game. Grab your notebooks and pencils. Professor Witte is here with the knowledge. Here's our conversation. Neil, thanks for doing this. I wanted to talk to you because I've been going out more, which is fun for me, but then also not fun because I can't turn off the work part of my brain. And I've seen, yeah, right. It's like I just want to have a beer, but I'm watching things that I don't want to see, or seeing pours that I don't want to receive, or, like whatever it is. Yeah. You can't turn it off, can you? You've been doing this for so long. Is it?
Oh, I manage, right? I mean, I've been doing this type of work for over 25 years now, and it's, you find ways to cope.
And so what I wanted to kick off was, and we'll talk about that, but like, is the pendulum always kind of seems to swing in beer, right? And draft business was doing really well before COVID. COVID obviously killed draft business. There's been a big focus in the industry on packaging, cans specifically, getting those dialed in so that they don't explode anymore, or convincing customers that exploding cans just means that it's extra craft or
Yeah.
whatever the bullshit was back then.
Yeah.
And now, as I feel like, I mean, the world's been opened up for a while, but I've been out drinking more, and I've been out at bars and breweries more and drinking a lot more draft beer. And I think, while the numbers might not bear that out in the large scale, people are coming into tap rooms. They are looking for those experiences, and breweries specifically have a real opportunity to capitalize on that. And then consumers should know what they should be looking for. So with teeing it up like that, I wonder, from your take, from traveling around, from talking to a lot of people, what do you see as the state of draft beer in the craft space in the US right now?
Well, it's it's got problems, but it's always had problems from a quality perspective. Now, I'm not trying to say that all is terrible, but when I started doing field quality work with Boulevard Brewing Company back in 2000, we were up against a lot of cleanliness issues. People, not knowing what a clean glass was, not really using good practice when pouring beer. I mean, there were air compressors pushing beer back then, so, things changed quite a bit, as the beer business grew and craft beer became a thing and took off like a rocket. And people started to care more about how the beer was being delivered to the customer. But, a lot of problems still remain, right? So line cleaning is still a battle. It's a lot of it's staffing issues with distributors and, just lack of knowledge about it. Glassware cleanliness, I think, has taken a few steps forward. Maybe like one step back, that type of thing.
How about the one step back? I mean, just qualify that for a second. Because
Um,
because I'm seeing it more and more at places that used to understand it, and it's getting me mad enough to reach out to people that I know at these places and being basically like, what the hell?
yeah, I think
Maybe a little nicer than that, but not by much.
Yeah, I think the one step back is maybe more my impression that like we had some real momentum. I remember a day, not too long ago when there weren't glass rinsers at every draft beer tower, and now
Sure.
now there is, and people are paying more attention to it, and people were being more deliberate about the glassware they were selecting, and it was kind of a thing for a bit, but then it seemed to kind of just stop at a point where, short of where I thought maybe it could have landed, right? You go to Belgium, and the way they treat their glassware is on a whole other level. The right glass.
There's reverence.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They revere using correct glassware and glassware cleanliness. And we stopped well short of that. I think, there's a lot better glassware out there in your average bar than there used to be, but there's still a ton of shaker pints, and that's fine to a certain extent. But
When you
there's
say
just still
better
a lot of dirty.
glassware, sorry, when you say better glassware than the shaker pint, like
Well,
what's
more of
ideal for you in your world?
I think something that is going to accentuate the beer flavor a little bit more. And that's, and I hedged a little bit when I kind of took a little dig at the shaker pint because, with the things I've been doing lately, I'm focusing a lot more on intention, right? So if you have a shaker pint and you're making sure that it's really clean, And, you're pouring beer into that pint with intention, and you're careful about how you're putting it in there. You're putting the right amount of foam, maybe even the right type of foam on there, and you're doing it in a certain way, and you're not just throwing the beer into the glass. That can make a big difference. And sometimes that can be a better pour than someone who's using, a stemmed tulip, which is kind of what I was referring to earlier with like some better glassware, something that, the tulip glass is going to accentuate beer flavors in a way that you can't really get out of a shaker pint. But if you're just, throwing it into the glass and it's not necessarily clean, or if you're filling it up to the rim and you're not paying attention to foam, that pour could be worse than what goes into a shaker pint, right? So, the glassware is one element of it. And, you see a lot more variety out there now than you used to. There's a lot more potential for bars to use glassware to accentuate flavors in beer than there used to be, because there's just, there's more stuff like tulip glasses or like a Willie Becker pint glass, which, does a little bit better job of kind of holding up the foam and featuring good aromas and flavors in beer. So, there's better glassware out there, but I think that's really only just part of it, right? Cleaning that glass is a big part of it. And just being intentional about how you're putting that beer into the glass. And that intention really kind of stretches all the way through draft service, starting with, making sure that your system is dialed in, making sure your system is clean. And again, glassware selection, glassware cleanliness, and then just pouring with intention. And that's something that I've been focusing on quite a bit with my ritual pour pop-up, is that intentional pouring.
All right, so I want to talk about that, right? Because we'll get to ritual pours in just a second, but the intentionality of it, because places are busy, they hopefully, and it just sort of becomes this mechanical thing that you do. If you're a server, and it's just, okay, I got to fill it up, got to fill this order, got to, get it out, got to do the next one, like over and over and over again. And I think in a lot of places you get that stadium pour, where, you're not really getting the head that it deserves, because like on a beer. And so the presentation is missing. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is I was in Salt Lake City a couple weeks ago, stopped by Templin Family Brewery. They have the proper glassware where everything is marked, for where the liquid should stop, half liter, whatever. And then it's got this, wonderful foam on it, and it's patient, and it is beautiful when it hits the table, and you want to take the picture for Instagram when you see it. And it stopped me in a way that, like, there's a reason when people go to beer stot, it's the glassware, it's the foam, it's the rising above the rim. There's something that is striking about it, and it is, you have to wait for it, and there's anticipation for it. And so I want to dive into that word intentionality, intentional when it comes to this. And I'm hoping you can unpack that.
Yeah. So, you're right on with that perception. They took the time to pour it the right way. They're using glassware that's got a certain marking on it. That means, they've got kind of a target for that foam, right? They're taking the time to get the foam in the right proportion. And when it comes to you, you notice that, right? You notice all of those little details, and it's that first way that everybody consumes beer, which is visually. And that's a big part of it, right? So if you get a beer that looks really beautiful, you're more likely to enjoy that beer. So, there's that perception part of it. If you get a beer that's poured all the way up to the brim with no foam at all, you might very well think that beer is flat when it might be fully carbonated, right?
Right.
And you might drink that beer. I've had I've judged beer with beer judges who were drinking beer that had no foam on it at all, and it was really highly carbonated, but they perceived it as being flat because of that visual aspect. So I think that stuff is really important. But then that foam, that intentionally creating a certain amount of foam, and in some instances a certain type of foam, can really affect the actual aroma and flavor perception of beer. Beer is giving off all kinds of volatile aromas. They're being carried up out of the cup or out of the glass with the aid of carbonation release. And a good color of foam on top is going to trap a lot of these volatile aromas in these kind of millions of bubbles sitting on top. And as they slowly pop and release those aromas, you're getting this kind of slow release of aromas up to your nose. And it's kind of concentrating that and preserving that and giving you a slow release. And that's something you just don't really get when there's no foam at all on a beer. So that's part of it there. And, I think Bierstadt, for example, does a really great job of emphasizing that. That's one of the beauties, Bierstadt in Denver. For those people listening who don't know what Bierstadt is, please go there.
Yes.
They have their slow pour pills, which takes, a good 5 minutes or so to complete the pour. And when you get it, you've got this kind of big rocky collar of foam. It's not even a collar really anymore. It's like this mountain of foam coming up over the rim of the glass. It looks beautiful. The beer is amazing. That kind of goes without saying. But they've taken the time to produce something very deliberately. And they're going for a specific flavor profile in the beer that is after pouring, which is different than if you were to drink that beer out of the Bright Tank, for example. They're focusing on manipulating the flavor of the beer by how they're pouring it. And there's a certain ritual to this that they do. There's multiple pours. The faucets they're using, the Luker side pull faucets, the time in between each pour, all of those things are done very intentionally to create a certain flavor profile. And it works. When you get it, you've waited for it. I mean, part of it is that anticipation, and then seeing something that unique, seeing how they're doing it back there, and then seeing that big mountain of fluffy foam sitting on top. All of those things work visually and mentally before you even take that first drink. And then when you take that first drink, it's just a delicious beer. And you understand, okay, this is really something special. And so, I think that's a good example of that intentionality, or that intention that you just don't see in a lot of places. If you could take that same beer and just, open a standard American faucet, fill up a pint glass, or any glass for that matter, and just fill it up, put it on the bar, and the beer would taste good, but it wouldn't taste nearly as good because the intention is not there. The time wasn't taken to pour it the right way and to really get that beer into customers' hands in a very particular way. It's just like, oh, well, it's going to come out the way it comes out, and here it is. And, sometimes that works because the beer is really good, but man, pouring it the right way can make a huge difference.
So, we're at this weird crossroads with breweries in America right now, and there's a bunch closing, and everybody's trying to fight for, everybody's hard-earned dollars, and I get that, and there's a lot to keep up with. But as you're saying this, I was jumping around in my mind to breweries that have been doing this, like Green Bench, like Good Word, Cohesion does it. There's a few more that have come to mind that then disappeared from my mind, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of breweries that I go into where it's just the standard American tap faucet, and it's like, here you go. And again, as you said, like it's a perfectly good tasting beer, or at least you hope it's going to be. Um, but as we're in this weird spot and people are thinking about the future, it really struck me that this is a key time for people to be thinking about service in that way and putting the training in. Like Notch, does that quite well.
Yeah, I think great.
Putting the training in the right way to differentiate yourself from the bar down the street that has all the same taps that you do. Maybe not as, they have different beers, but, as a way to stand out a little bit more, to make customers feel, fancy is not the right word, but just a little more appreciated, or
Well,
that
it feels like they're
ceremony is
getting
behind
something
it. Yeah.
special, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's that unique experience that, when you hear people talking about, what consumers are looking for these days, they're looking for authentic experiences, unique experiences, something special, something different than what they've been getting. And I think for a long time, uh, uh, craft beer was offering something unique and different. And, the modern American beer business was, innovating and creating different styles and, was growing like gangbusters. And now there's just this kind of feeling that there's just not much new or fresh in beer anymore. That, the innovation kind of stopped at hazy IPA, and then it just kind of took over. And now brewers are kind of, some brewers are kind of flailing and trying to figure out, all right, well, what's the next thing here? Like what can we be doing that's gonna, capture people's attention? What's the next thing? And I think, some breweries are looking for new styles, like another new style. And I think, my feeling is that's the wrong way to go, because we've got so many styles of beer available right now that there's kind of this fatigue out there. I mean, you look at the beer shelf, which is shrinking, by the way, but it's still huge.
Yeah.
And the number of beer styles that are on the shelf, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for people who know what all of those styles are. And most people don't know what all those styles are. So you can imagine the regular consumer looking at a beer shelf or looking at, at a tap wall with, 30, 40, 50 beers or more, and wondering, what is all this? And in an era when, beer sales aren't what they used to be, you go to these beer bars and sometimes breweries that have all of these different beers to choose from, chances are they're not selling through that many different styles of beer that quickly. So when you do try something new as a consumer, like, oh, hey, this sounds fun, well, I'll try this, there's a really good chance that you're going to be getting something that's old and just not fresh. And so in my mind, I think a lot of these businesses, a lot of these breweries would do well to kind of reel things back in, focus on a few things that you can do really well, and then put that focus on delivering that beer to people in a special way, delivering it the right way with intention. And, that's where you see, like Bierstadt, or you mentioned Notch, those are places that have an identity, and they aren't making every style under the sun. They spend a lot of time making sure that they're delivering beer the right way to people. And people, the people show up for it, right? That's why, we're talking about these breweries on a podcast right now. I mean, they've realized success with this. And I think that's just something that is missing right now in beer. And I think that's something that should be more of a focus for the industry. We've come a long ways with awareness of, the glassware thing, although it's still not perfect. We've come a long way with, line cleaning awareness, although it's still not perfect. A lot of these quality issues that I've been, preaching about and working on for a couple decades now. And things have improved, but they're still not great. But really, it's that last part, just that paying close attention to the service is something that I think is probably most in need of improvement right now. And I've had similar experiences to you going places where, the beer is good. They make really good beer, but they just are throwing it into a glass, and it's just not a special experience. It's like, okay, this beer, yeah, it tastes good, but boy, it could taste a lot better. And, if they would just take the time to do this a little bit more intentionally.
Yeah. So let's talk about ritual pours and how that came about.
Yeah. So this was kind of a project that I started, I started down this path a couple of years ago. Good friend of mine, Jenny Faflin at Dovetail Brewing in Chicago, turned me on to a social media account of a guy in Hiroshima, Hiroshi Shigetomi, and he runs the Shigetomi beer stand in Hiroshima, and he's somewhat of a YouTube phenomenon with all these videos and a big social media presence. And he's an older gentleman, runs this bar that's only open, I think, for like 2 or 3 hours a day or something like that. Very short period of time. He opens up. It's a standing bar where it's very small. There's no seats, but from the looks of it, it can fit maybe 8 people in there. Pretty small. Serves one beer. It's usually something that I think he pours Sapporo a lot of times. So it's something. It's not anything that's like people can't get anywhere else. But he offers it. He pours it in like a dozen different ways, and people line up down the street for it. And he does he's this kind of beer evangelist. He does a great job of preaching beer service and glassware, cleanliness, and all of the quality aspects of pouring and serving beer. And he's very successful at it. And I just thought that was fascinating. So it got me down this rabbit hole of different types of beer service. And, I had already kind of gone down the rabbit hole of Czech style pouring and Lucre pouring. The Lucre is the side pull faucets that are, I wouldn't say ubiquitous, but they're not that hard to find. About, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago. And I kind of credit Bierstadt with kind of starting that trend of getting Lucre side pull faucets into a lot of people's hands. And I think Notch to a large extent too. Those two breweries use those faucets. Those are the Czech style faucets that it's a pretty simple ball valve faucet with a side pull handle that has a screen in the nozzle that gives the server the ability to produce a wetter, denser foam. And that wet, dense foam is a little sweeter, and it's really creamy, and it just has a completely unique mouthfeel to it and flavor. And it's not something that you can really produce with a standard American rear seating faucet. And the traditional Czech style pours feature this. So there's, one of the most popular pours is Hladinka, and where this creamy foam is start with a creamy foam on the bottom of the glass, and then the nozzle of the faucet is submerged under the foam, and clear pour is layered underneath that. And you end up with about a third of a mug full of this creamy foam. And it's a totally different experience than what you would get at Bierstadt, for example. Bierstadt is this really light fluffy foam that raises above the level of the rim of the glass. But this wet drinkable foam is just that. It's drinkable, it's sweeter, and it's got a lot of beer in it. And when you take a drink, you're not trying to get around that that foam to get to the beer. You're drinking the foam, and then the beer, as that gets into your mouth too, it's blending right in, and you almost can't tell where the foam stops and the beer starts. And it's a totally unique drinking experience if you've never had a pour like that. And so I've been, I'm pretty well versed in that Czech style of pouring, but then seeing what was being done in Japan as I started to dive down this rabbit hole. They revere foam in a lot of the same ways that Czechs do, in that they're producing different types of foam and pouring beer in different ways to create this foam, and in different amounts, and combining it with the beer in different ways. So there's some pours, there's one particular pour which is pretty popular called a sharp pour, where they'll pour the beer into a glass with zero foam breakout, as little foam as possible. So they're preserving all the carbonation, and they fill it up to maybe 3/4 of the way. And then they'll stop and get this really creamy foam coming out of the faucet and layer that foam on top. So with that, you've got the fully carbonated beer with this really wet, creamy, drinkable foam on top. And it's just like I explained before, where when you take a drink of a sharp pour, you've got this really sweet drinkable foam, and then there's almost no, it's hard to tell where the foam stops and the beer begins. There's other pours that agitate the beer quite a bit and get the foam to break out of the beer. So the foam that's being created is coming from the beer. And so what that's doing is knocking carbonation out of the beer. It makes the beer a little sweeter. Some of those bittering compounds go up into the foam, and you've got a different flavor profile with that type of pour. And so using these kind of almost like pulling these different levers in a way, you can create different types of foam, like a really fluffy, light foam. You can create a dense, sweeter, drinkable foam. You can have those in combination with different carbonation levels of the beer, depending on whether you're getting the foam from the beer in the glass or layering that foam on top. And that changes the bitterness level of the beer, the mouthfeel of the beer. And so there's all these different combinations that you can do to come up with some different flavor profiles from a single beer. And so seeing this and kind of diving down this rabbit hole, I'm like, man, this is really cool, because, pouring beer and beer service and all, and draft stuff has always been my thing. And I'm like, I would like to start doing this and start pouring beer like this. And because I think it would be a fun pop-up to have.
Yeah.
And around the same time, JP in Chicago at Dovetail, who kind of sent me down this rabbit hole, started to host some pop-ups at Dovetail doing exactly that same thing, with Ziggy from Beer Miscuous Beer Bar in Chicago. That has,
that's great.
Yeah, great place. So he's kind of gone down that rabbit hole too. And they've been holding semi-regular pop-ups together at Dovetail, where he's the guest tapster. And I think for their second one, she told me about it, and I'm like, all right, well, I got to come up this weekend to see that. So I flew up to Chicago, saw him do it, and I had been kind of researching some equipment, so I got myself a dispenser that was, something that's not really something that many people in the States use, more of a flash chiller, or like kind of a refrigerated cold plate, if you will. It's a flash chiller with a tower on it that I can take from bar to bar. I've got a little spool boy glassware cleaning setup that's portable that I can take anywhere with me. And I do pop-ups at these places featuring pours that I the way I characterize it is these pours are inspired by Czech style pouring and Japanese style pouring. I don't claim that these are actual Japanese style pours or Czech style
Right.
pours. This is my interpretation of things that I'm learning online and by being really obsessive and studying and watching these things, and by things I've learned by buying kegs and just dumping a lot of beer down the drain, trying to figure out how to do it. So that's what ritual pour is. It's kind of it's a study in how pouring beer in different ways can manipulate the flavor of that single beer. And it's a lot of fun.
As you were talking about this, I was thinking about some of those early days not early days, but like maybe like I, 15 years ago in craft. I've lost all concept of time, so I'm just throwing out arbitrary years now, right? We've both been doing this so long. It's like, like you'll say to somebody like, "Oh yeah, like 5 years ago," and they're like, "No, that was 2003."
I
It's like,
know, right?
"Oh, okay, I'm old." But there was this big focus on experimentation, and we're in the middle of hop harvest right now, and there's, all of these experimental hops that are being grown, and brewers are doing rubbings and trying to figure out, like, where is this going to fit into the beer? But there was so much innovation of like, we're going to fuck with styles and we're going to try different ingredients and establish styles just to see what happens. And there were some really delightful results that came out of it. And then
Oh yeah.
I think the real world pressure kind of got to a lot of folks. And it's like, innovation is fun if you have the pipeline for it, but we found 5 beers that work for our portfolio. And that's what we need to focus on because that's, how we're paying our bills and that kind of thing. Right.
Mhm.
And when you were talking about this, it's like and it goes back to like more breweries should have better draft systems and thinking about their pouring, because then they can mess with it the way that you are. And because there isn't the American pour right now, aside from maybe the stadium pour, which, like is almost how the world saw our beer in the 70s and 80s and maybe even beyond. Right. So there's such an opportunity to experiment with not only visuals but flavor and aroma. um that
Yeah.
I got excited by this, where it's just like we can take the good beer that you're making now, right? Because American beer craft has never been better, even though there's a lot of mediocre out there. There are
I,
so
I
many
agree.
places doing great stuff. Like this is an uncharted frontier. Is that
That's
fair?
what got
Yeah.
me excited about it. Yeah, because I'm looking at all this and I'm like, nobody is doing this. I don't, like, and I don't want to say nobody. Obviously, I just talked about JP and Ziggy doing these pop-ups at Dovetail, and I think there are some people who are doing versions of this in different places that are doing a sharp pour and things like that. But uh, you know, having an event where the menu is not a beer menu but the menu is, here are 7 different ways that you can order this single beer. That's fun. That gets me excited. It's like, wow, that's, people you just don't see that, you know? And so that is something that I think has potential. It's something new. It's fresh. It's focused on quality. It's focused on delivering beer in a really great way to the beer drinker. And I think that's it's kind of the complete thing for me. It's the complete package. It incorporates all the quality aspects that I've worked so hard on my whole career, and it incorporates something new and innovative for at least the US market, right? And you know, that's the kind of stuff that gets me going. I really like that.
Yeah.
So I think there's some real potential for for breweries and bars to take elements of that. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be, well, yeah, we just got one beer, we're pouring it 7 different ways, like I do with ritual pour. But, I think there's some elements there of, hey, we can be a little bit more deliberate about how we're pouring beer and, create some unique flavors here and do some versions of that. I've kind of spoiled myself with these pop-ups that I do, because there's a couple of these pours that I just really, really like a lot. And there are times when I go to like a really great brewery and I drink an amazing beer and I'm like, this beer is really good. It would be better if it were a sharp pour. I just kind of got myself spoiled for some of these pours, because it really does like make a really incredible drinking experience.
Yeah. Did you just say shark pull?
Sharp pour.
Sharp pour.
Sharp.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
sharp
getting
pour.
older, I need to start dialing up the volume.
Yeah,
of these
sorry.
things.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
It's not a common term. That was the one I described, where you pour the beer with no foam breakout and then layer the foam on top.
Right.
And the other element that I didn't describe about that is when you're layering that foam on top, that the very top part of that foam is actually a little bit fluffier and carries a little bit more bitterness in it. And you let that run over the glass. So it's just like this milky, wonderful, sweet, drinkable foam on top. It's a really great way to consume beer.
So much of what, as you've been talking, I've been thinking about, because it's Czech, or, you're talking about Sapporo, or we're talking about Bierstadt, or, these other places, the Notch, lagers come to mind, right? But there's got to be potential in the IPA space, right?
I think there is with some of these, right? Now, what I do with ritual pour is I'm largely pouring lager beer. And the reason why I'm doing that is, my menu is 7 different pours. And, at the end of the day, it is one beer. And so there's a limit to the variation that you can manipulate from one beer. But almost everybody is, the first time they try, a couple of these different pours, are almost everybody is really surprised at how different they can be. But I think, at the end of the day, that variation has some limitations. And I think a lager beer, particularly a very nicely balanced one that has a pretty firm, crisp character to it, a nice amount of bitterness, that type of beer lends itself to featuring the different characteristics of those pours a little bit better than some other beers would. An IPA, pouring an IPA in a certain way can lessen some of that bitterness if that's what you want. And there's certain pours that can accentuate that bitterness in a certain way, right? So you can do these pours with any type of beer. And, I've got a handful of beers in my mind that I want to start doing and messing around with this type of pouring that are kind of outside that. I've been doing a lot of these events. I'm doing a number of public events with my ritual pour, but I think the bulk of them have just been, at my house. I hold about once a month, I'll hold a 2-hour session at my house and just send out invites and get a bunch of people over to come over on a Saturday afternoon and have a couple of beers and try out something new.
I'm now going to be offering your address up to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
Hey, who wants to know where Neil lives? I do.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you an invite, John. I don't know if I'd be able to have
I would love to do that.
the listeners over all at once.
I think that'd be cool. No, but I think it's so important, and you've touched on a lot of this, right? But I hope that right now there is somebody in the beer space listening who is like, yeah, I have to do this. And then you get into that, but how do I start kind of thing? And I think you've given a roadmap fairly well so far, but like, what is the first simple step beyond, yes, I want to have better beer service and better beer pouring, what's the next step that a brewer or owner should be thinking about to action to get them to pouring greatness?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess it depends on what direction you want to go. If you just want to be a little bit more intentional about pouring beer and maybe starting to work with you know creating some different flavor profiles or subtly changing your beer in a very intentional way. I think part of it starts with the faucet. The standard American rear seating faucet is a great faucet. I mean, it does its job. It's very well designed, but it's very limited in the type of foam that it can create. When you crack that faucet open, you'll get foam out of it, but it kind of spits out and it tumbles out in kind of an uncontrollable way. There are other faucets that can create the type of foam, create different types of foam and in a more controllable way. One of them is that Lucre side pull faucet, and they're very expensive faucets, but they're pretty versatile. You can pour beer in a number of different ways with that type of faucet, but it gives you the ability to create a really wet, drinkable foam. Also gives you the ability to create some really light, fluffy foam like Bierstadt does with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good option. What I use for ritual pour is I use what's called a Debitab. It's a micromatic faucet, and it's just a ball valve with a longer, more narrow spout. And they're not that uncommon out there, and that allows me to create again different types of foam in a more controllable way and deliver it in glass in a more controllable way. So I think that's one element of it. And the other is to, maybe take a deep dive on some of these pouring techniques. If you want to emulate some Czech style pours like a Hladinka or a Snit or the Mliko, which is the milk pour, which is 100% foam, a very drinkable wet foam, very unique experience. A great resource for that is on the Cicerone website. There's a video interview that I did with Evan Rail, who I'm sure you know, John.
Yep.
He's a beer writer, American expat living in the Czech Republic. I did an interview with him on YouTube about Lucre side pull faucets. And he is a wealth of knowledge, knows a ton about them, all the ins and outs and all the pours. And so, it's an hour or so of me just lobbing him softball questions and him just going on about these faucets. And it's really great information that he gives. And we included videos from Pilsner Kell, and the folks at Lucre provided some Pilsner Kell videos of people pouring the different types of pours. And Notch gave us some videos to use in that interview. So there's some great information there. That's a really great resource for learning how to pour beer in a different way and seeing how people are doing it. Doing a deep dive on some of these Japanese style pours. I don't have as clear of a path of that, but I think a good place to start would be to look up the Shigatomi beer stand on YouTube, and there's a ton of videos out there, and it can be a little bit to wade through because all those videos are in Japanese and very few of them have English subtitles.
Oh yeah.
And so I spent a crazy amount of time trying to figure out what he was saying and studying some of these videos and some other Instagram accounts and things like that. There's a lot of stuff out there if you dig deep enough. I think starting with the faucet, making sure you've got a well-designed system that's going to be able to deliver beer the right way, and then go on a learning adventure there's all kinds of information out there.
I love it. I've been asking folks on this show for a while now, and it's called the Green Door question. And it involves the television show The Good Place. In the final season, they introduce the concept of a green door, and the characters can walk through it and be wherever they want, doing whatever they want. So if we had a green door on our plane of existence, and this conversation ended, and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking?
Oh, wow. Well, I think, I mean, based on this conversation, I would love to go to Hiroshima to the Shigatomi beer stand.
That was where my mind was
Yeah, I mean, Hiroshi
well.
Shigatomi is this beer evangelist, and I've watched so many of his videos, and I've just got a great admiration for what he does and the passion that he has. I would love to have a beer at his bar.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. For those who want more on Ritual Pour and pours and what you're doing, tell them how to do that.
Well, I have an Instagram account at Ritual Pour. That's where you'll find information about upcoming pop-ups, occasional weird beer videos and posts. I am only so at self-promotion and social media. So, it's a little spotty, but that's where you're going to find information about the Ritual Pour.
Love it. And I'm following as we speak. Neil, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for doing this. And I'm going to be on your doorstep before you know it. So
Excellent.
Thanks,
I can't wait. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
You know what pours beautifully in a glass? Rauk beer. Make sure you join the This Week in Rauk Beer group on Facebook or follow at TW Rauk Beer on Instagram. Upload your photos, join the conversation. And as always, you can reach out to me anytime by email at John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. You can also support us by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support. And when you're at the website, you can go check out new content as well as the archives, which go all the way back to 1979. And you can also there find the links to follow All About Beer on social media. Here is a note from this episode's sponsors. We thank them for their support, and we hope you'll give them your business. StompStickers.com is loaded with features to make ordering a breeze. They save all your artwork and order history, so restocking your best sellers is just a click away. Oh, and did we mention free shipping on every order? Try Stomp Stickers today and snag 15% off of your first order with the code FIRSTRUN.
Calling all hopheads. Dogfish Head's 60-minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60 Minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60 Minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
If you like smart audio content, a reminder that All About Beer has a separate podcast channel. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.